Hey everybody! The holidays are here and I've got a Christmas log you'll want to make every year. I'm making these all beef jalapeno cheese snack sticks that everyone's gonna love. So let's get started. I've done this recipe before. It's one of my most popular videos on the channel, but I'm doing it again because I need content and this happens to be what I'm making right now. Now it will be slightly different because I'm making this for gifts for the family and some of them don't do pork, so this is going to be an all beef recipe. And I'm also quite a bit better at the craft than I was back when I made that old video. And as a special treat for my American friends, I won't be using metric measurements on this. I'm gonna use standard volumetric measurements for this, so it'll be nice and easy for you. But for all my metric system friends, I will put that recipe down in the comments. So let's get started by taking a look at the meat. And here I've got 7 pounds of lean beef. And some of this has been in the freezer for a little while. It's not freezer burnt, but you'll see it's lost some of its original luster. But don't worry about that. The cure that we're gonna use here is gonna bring that right back to a nice rosy red. And over here, I've got 3 pounds of beef fat scraps, and I've trimmed this up pretty good so it's really almost all fat. So when I'm using pork bellies, I usually go 2 parts lean to 1 part pork belly because there's some meat mixed in with that pork belly. But this is so fatty that I'm gonna use a little bit less of this than I would if I were using the pork belly. Now this has been out in the freezer for a while since I cut it up, so it's icy cold and firmed up a lot. I've also had my grinder parts in the freezer and they're ice cold. And I'm gonna run this 1 pass through the fine plate. That's about an 1/8 inch hole in that. Now let's run this through the grinder and then we'll take a look at the spice bill for this festive Frank. Now let's take a look at this merry mix of spices for this recipe. And I'm not going to be adding a whole lot because I want the main flavors to be jalapeno and cheese. Let's start here with the salt, and I'm going to be using 1.5 teaspoons of salt per pound of meat. So this is 15 teaspoons of salt, also known as 5 tablespoons. This is the cure, and I've got 2 teaspoons of pink cure number 1, also known as Prague powder number 1. This is 1.5 cups of non-fat powdered milk. That is our binder. It's going to add a little protein punch in there and help this sausage really stick together nicely. And I almost always put some garlic in my sausage, so this is 1 tablespoon of garlic powder. And I want this sausage to be generously festooned with jalapeños. So this is 1 cup of freeze-dried jalapeños. And a lot of people ask why I use the dried jalapeños rather than fresh jalapeños. Well, as it so happens, these have a lot more concentrated jalapeno flavor, and they won't leave little wet spots in the sticks like fresh jalapeños can. Just be careful that you don't put in so much that they slay you. Now this is 1 teaspoon of ground cloves, and that is not enough that it's going to make this taste all eggnoggy or anything. It's going to be way in the background. You're barely going to notice it, but there's something about the flavor of clove that just makes beef beefier. And I'm going to spruce things up a bit with this green hot sauce. Now you could use whatever hot sauce you like. Just don't use one that has a vinegar base. Make sure the first ingredient is either water or, even better, peppers. A little bit of vinegar in the sauce is fine, but if it's mainly vinegar, that can kind of break down the meat and mess with the texture of your sausage. So I'm going to get most of my dry ingredients mixed together. I'll save the hot sauce and jalapenos for when I start mixing that. Now let's talk about cheese, and today I'm using this hot pepper flavored high temperature cheese. And the high temperature cheese has a higher melting point than the cheese you might find in your grocery store's dairy case, so it holds its shape and texture all the way through the cooking. You could use regular cheese in here, but what often happens is that as that cheese heats up, it breaks and the milk solids and the oil separate, and that cheese pellet kind of collapses a little bit and the texture changes, and it also can leave a little hollow spot. So I always use high temperature cheese when I'm making a sausage like this. Let's get this loaded up. Now I'm gonna need a little liquid in here to help with mixing, and I could use water, but everybody knows it's the most wonderful time for a beer.
Oh,
so I'm gonna add 1 cup of a nice hoppy beer. Now I need to mix this until it gets really nice and sticky, and that'll help bind the sausage really well. And if you're doing it by hand, it is a fair bit of work, but well worth the effort. And I like to mix this until it's just about ready, and then add the cheese in right at the end so I don't beat those cheese chunks up too much. We're getting close, so I'm going to start adding in the cheese, and I'm going to use 1 pound of that high temperature cheese for this 10-pound batch. I'm also going to check and see how those jalapeños look in there. What I like to do is just grab any random pinch, a bite-sized pinch, and make sure that I've got at least 1 chunk of jalapeno in every bite. And this looks pretty good. And there's no need to limit yourself to that 1 cup of jalapenos in here. Put as much as you like in there, or as little as you like. I like a raging hot sausage, but I've got to keep other people in mind because I'm going to be giving this batch out as gifts. There we go. Really nice and sticky. That's gonna make for a great stick. And now, this goes out into the refrigerator overnight to let that cure work its magic. And we will be back here bright and early on another Sausage Sunday to finish this one off. And we're back bright and early on a wintry Sausage Sunday. Everybody's here, so now it's time to lock and load and crank out this jolly jerky. Normally, I'd hang these out in the sausage closet to dry out a bit, but the sausage closet is currently occupied by a big batch of summer sausage, so these guys are going to have to hang out here in kielbasa corner for about an hour to start them coming up to temperature and get those casings to start drying out. Now we're out in the smoker for the second stage of drying, and we're just continuing to dry the casings right now. So this is a very low temperature smoker, right around 110 degrees Fahrenheit, and there's no humidity or smoke right now. So I don't have any water in the water pan. I'm going to leave them here for about an hour at this low temp, just to continue to get those casings really, really dry, and then we'll come out, add a little humidity, and start the smoke. And you're probably going to have to leave your smoker door cracked quite a ways to hit that low temperature. Now these casings are nice and dry, so it's time to start smoking these. So I'll get some hickory in there today. I'm going to put some water in the water pan to create some humidity. And the smoking schedule today will be 2 hours at 140 degrees Fahrenheit, followed by 2 hours at 150. And then I'll finish them off at 180 degrees until I get an internal temperature between 152 and 155 degrees. After our 4-hour smoke, we got real good red color. These things are still nice and plump and not all wrinkled up, so it's just about time to turn this up for the finish. So I'm going to turn this up to 180. I'll get my temperature probe down inside the middle of one of those, and then I'll pull them when they hit between 152 and 155 Fahrenheit. There we go. I took these up to 155 degrees Fahrenheit. That took about an hour and a half after I raised the temperature up to 180. Now I want to get them in an ice bath, get them cooled down really quickly to stop any carryover cooking and leave them exactly how I want them. And I'll leave them in here for 10 minutes or so just to make sure they get cold all the way down and into the center. And we are done for the day. Now, they can hang out here overnight until they dry out, and you can pack them up and put them in the fridge and you're good to go. But this time I'm gonna do it a little differently. I'm gonna let these hang at room temperature for a few days to dry them out even more. And that should put a real nice chew on them and hopefully make for a nice snappy casing. Now let's see how we did. Check out that bite. Oh yeah. That is a satisfying snap. Beefy. To be honest with you, I prefer using pork fat in most sausages because I think it makes for a more succulent stick. But that's just me. These are about as good as a porkless pole can be for me. They've got a really nice texture, and the extra drying makes that casing pop. I had these hanging at room temperature for 3 days, then I moved them onto a tray in the refrigerator and left them uncovered for another 3 days. Now let's get a look inside of this guy real quick. Oh yeah, not too shabby. It's a little difficult to see the cheese because it's the same color as the fat, but there are plenty of cheese bits in here, and some good jalapeno bits as well. You see that's got a very nice grain to it. And it's just not very spicy. I went easy on the jalapenos on this one to be nice to my friends and family. Now let's compare this one to the one that I bagged up and put in the refrigerator right away after they cooled down. And you can see the difference is obvious. This one has got a lot more kringles than this guy over here. And this one's a lot more like the ones you buy at the grocery store, your sporting goods store, or maybe on the counter of your local mini mart. And this one is much fatter and much more tender. Let's check out the difference in the casings. This one here, quite flexible. It's not tough at all, but it hasn't got a real hard snap to it. Compared to this guy, bang! That is what I'm talking about. I love it. They're both very good, and it's just up to you whether you like a thick and juicy stick or a more crunchy cane. Or you can make both out of the same batch. As for the flavor, it's not complicated at all. It's jalapenos, cheese, and smoke. That's a classic combo that never fails. These are elfin delicious, and I promise you everybody's gonna want to get their claws into them. So, I hope you all have a wonderful holiday season, and give this one a try, because I know you're gonna love it. Season's meetings.